We're going to a congressman again, just like yesterday. Okay, joining us now to discuss this and more is Maryland Democratic Congressman Glenn Ivey. He is a member of the Judiciary Committee. He has standing, not only a voting card, but he's on the Judiciary Committee to talk about all this. Oh, Congressman, what do you think? Donald Trump's superpower is that the more Democrats go after him, the more he can portray himself as being victimized by the, quote, weaponization of the federal government and, in this case, state governments, the better off he is. What do you say? What's your reaction to these rulings in Colorado and Maine?
Well, I think, the Supreme Court's going to have to make a decision ultimately because you have multiple states making multiple interpretations of the same constitutional language. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's got to decide what that is. I don't think all of that happens before the elections get underway, though. And I think it's critical for Democrats at every level, but especially in the presidential elections, to focus just on winning the elections. You leave the legal track to play out as it's going to play out. Focus on winning these elections at every ballot box across the country.
Okay, two of your colleagues in Congress, one Democrat from California, Ted Lieu, says he's pleased that the Maine Secretary of State, Shana Bellows, is following the plain language of the Constitution. On the other hand, from Maine, Representative Jared Golden says, I voted to impeach Donald Trump for his role in the January 6th insurrection, and he does call it an insurrection. I do not believe he should be reelected as president of the United States. However, we are a nation of laws. Therefore, until he is actually found guilty of the crime of insurrection, he should be allowed on the ballot. Where do you come down on that? Who are you, a Ted Lieu man or a Jared Golden man on this one?
Well, the Constitution doesn't say anything about being convicted. This is sort of similar to the Santos arguments that we were going through with respect to the specific language of the Constitution. He didn't have to be convicted before he was removed. President Trump doesn't have to be convicted before he could be found to be an insurrectionist. And by the way, I think the evidence, as the Maine Secretary of State pointed out, is pretty overwhelming that there was an insurrection and he participated in it. The best the Supreme Court can do to get Trump out of this, I think, is to make a ruling based on a definition, maybe officer or the definition of insurrection potentially. But, it's going to be a tough argument to make, I think, that his efforts to actually overturn an election don't constitute an insurrection, especially when it's coupled with the violent attempt to overthrow at the Capitol there.
Okay, but let me drill down on that a little bit because you raise an important point, and it's likely that part of the case that the president and his lawyers will make, the former president, is that he was not convicted in a court of law, and I think Jared Golden said pretty much the same thing. I mean, impeachment in the House of Representatives, an impeachable offense is basically whatever a majority of the House says it is, right? And so is that legitimate grounds on which to draw the conclusion that he engaged in an insurrection?
Well, not to parse there, but, for impeachment, the Constitution gives a specific standard, which is high crimes and misdemeanors. For expulsion, it gave no standard. And so the argument that Santos made was that he had to be convicted of something before he could be expelled. But the Constitution's plain language doesn't require that. Same thing's present here. They talk about insurrection, but they don't say it has to be a conviction before it can be the basis of taking him off the ballot. But I'm one of the people that thinks we the Democrats need to beat him at the ballot box. The courts are going to do what the courts are going to do, but we have to run our race and win.
Right. Okay. Well, that's it. Congressman Glenn Ivey, I appreciate your time on this New Year's Eve, I guess. Have a happy New Year and great weekend.
Thank you. Same to you.